Students in the room, and good morning to those of you who are joining us online. My name is John, and welcome to our Sunday morning class with Guy Finley. We are here at the Life of Learning Foundation, and we're glad that you're going to join us for our session this morning. If you're new, when we gather here on Sunday mornings, Guy will present a talk that lasts about 60 minutes on the topic that you see listed below you on the screen. And then after he's through, we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back for an open discussion. A great opportunity for you to participate and to share and to ask questions and to join us in furthering our understanding of what Guy has presented today. So I hope you'll stay and take advantage of that. I do also want to remind you that if you have any technical issues, and technology is something, we often deal with technical issues and have to work through them, but if you have any problems, please do contact us. You can use the chat boxes or question area on whatever forum you're on, or you can send us an email at support@guyfinley.org, and we will do our best to try to work it out for you and make sure you stay connected with us. Lastly, for the students in the room, just a quick reminder that if you have a cell phone, we do ask, please do check to make sure you've turned it off or you've put it on airplane mode so it doesn't disturb the class this morning. I think we're ready to get started. I'll read the topic, and would you like me to read the key lesson too, Guy?
Sure.
All right. Here is our topic this morning. Do this when it feels like life is trying to pull you apart. And here's the key lesson. When the winds of fortune blow hot or cold, sweet or sour, don't lean toward one or away from the other. Instead, remain upright. Only the balanced mind can walk safely over and through the uneven surfaces of this world.
Only the balanced mind can walk safely over the uneven surfaces of this world. How many of you are beginning to suspect you don't have a balanced mind? If I'm able, after I do my usual greeting, to present to you 10% of what it is that I hope to present, you'll be sitting here, or welcome to all of you joining me from wherever you are in the world, whatever day or time it is. Glad you're here. You'll be listening to something that, were you to investigate it and explore it and make the insights that it purports your own, you would have put one of your feet well onto the invisible, pathless land where once you set out because you have found something of it, it begins to unfold in you instead of you trying to make it unfold according to your wishes of what a liberated life would be. Everything a human being imagines as being liberation is imagination. Everything, no exception. Everything a human being imagines about God, Christ, Buddha, the divine, whatever, all of it, 100% imagination. Not a shred of truth to it. Because the truth can't be captured in thought, and no single emotion will ever encompass the endless possibilities inherent in the intelligence that sits behind invisibly and guides all things in their potential towards what is intended for those individuals and those parts to find themselves united and a part of something greater than themselves that, again, no thought could possibly imagine. And that's what we're going to look at today unfortunately, using thoughts, which is the best we can do at this level. It wasn't always that way. You've all known moments where you didn't need to speak to someone and it was quite clear the communication, and I'm not talking about you glaring at someone. A shared moment with nature, in a shared moment with the beauty of something, the stillness of something, actually even the shared moment with your own sudden revelation and subsequent realization of something that you couldn't have imagined was true before. In those moments, there is, to use a word that I will cover a number of different ways today, there is a certain center that is not in the thing observed and not in the observer, but that is already there between them, and that once it's entered into, that individual understands something about their true nature that cannot be reached in any other way. So we're going to look at some of these mysteries today. One must lose their life in order to find it. If you save your life, you're going to lose it. The Four Noble Truths, which basically tell you as long as you have an unconscious want in your body, you're going to suffer. All of these things that are confusing and difficult to comprehend are only difficult to comprehend because our consciousness lives in the world that creates these difficulties. And that the paradox of any seeming truth isn't because the truth is paradoxical. It's because we live in different levels of consciousness, and one is forever trying to resolve the other through its understanding, and it can't do it. You understand only what is within you and you have seen as true as a part of yourself. And anything else you'll struggle to understand, which proves the understanding is still missing. So with that in mind, this whole idea of these various passages in Scripture, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. So I'm going to start with the special writing that I have for this class today. I don't expect you to understand it. Honestly, I don't. I hope that you can feel something in it. But by the time we're done with the talk, you will have seen and understood certain things that otherwise cannot be understood with the mind. You ready? Take a nice deep breath. Here is the special writing. I'll start and probably end the talk with it. There are two kinds of death: involuntary and voluntary. The former, the first death, serves this world, the womb of our first birth. It is a kingdom inseparable from the passage of time and its tireless servant death that feeds on all forms, all temporary forms of life, the moment of their creation. The latter, the second death, serves the timeless kingdom above this world, for whose sake we may agree to surrender our life in time, so that in the willing sacrifice of our first life, we might be incorporated into an undying one and be reborn accordingly. The heart of every true teaching is the same. And its heart is that within a human being dwells the kingdom of heaven, and in that kingdom an infinite set of possibilities that can only be realized by entering into those possibilities consciously. And all of the other teachings serve to explain what is required of that man or woman to go through this rebirth, to rediscover and be reunited with the basis of themselves. The central urge of every atom is to return to its divine source, the prodigal son. I could go on for days, but I haven't time. I'll touch on these things as I can while we go through the material. So we started way up here. Now let's come way down here. How many of you are crabby? Bunch of little crabby people. The world's pretty crabby, isn't it? What made the world so what made us so crusty? Crustaceans that we are. God, aren't you tired of being crabby? You should be. You little pincers all the time reaching out and grabbing people. You ever seen a crab feed? It's terrifying. Why am I so crabby? Anybody want to venture a guess? Patricia. Because people don't do what I want, she said. Wrong. But yes. How is it that one little thing, the smallest thing, someone, maybe no one even else notices, can take place and utter chaos follows? Yes or no? The smallest thing. Suddenly, somebody doesn't look at you right. You don't get what you want out of that moment. Something comes along and it's not part of the plan that you've got. People aren't obeying. And in that moment, what happens? When that smallest thing, and I really want to stretch that, the smallest thing. How many of you understand the smallest thing? They brought my food to the plate. It was only medium warm, it wasn't hot. Smallest thing. The waiter put his, which he shouldn't do, the waiter handed me my glass like this. Can you see it? Why is that not proper? Because I'm about to put my lips where his hands were. This is always the proper way to hand anybody a glass, is from the bottom. Little etiquette. No charge for the $3 donation for the etiquette lesson. How can my whole world revolves around something as small and as petty as it does? And it does revolve around the most petty things, doesn't it? In every petty moment there is what? Somebody does something, somebody doesn't do something, you fill in the blanks. What happens inside of me? There's a kind of a titanic struggle, isn't there? Friend, somebody, yesterday I was driving home, and there's a long line of cars just before you hit, I don't know what that is, 99 or something like that, before you go from this side and the other side of town. I don't know what that is, near Bimart. No one will know what this is, but, and when you're coming back up the road, there's always this long line of cars trying to get into that little place where it opens up into the city. So the proper thing is to take your place in that line. And then invariably, I'll watch in my mirror, and they'll come along, some big Ford X500 9032 truck. And I know exactly what that man or woman is going to do. What is that man or woman going to do? They are going to pull up to the front of that line. They're going to turn on their blinker like, oh, I forgot. And then they're going to wait until somebody lets them in, which, by the way, you have to do. Now, when that happens, or anything equivalent, what takes place in you? Do you go, oh, what a good citizen? Or do you sit in your car and you think to yourself, you know what, if I could get close enough, I'm going to give him a good glare. Maybe I'll flash him with my brights. Somebody needs to let that idiot know that he's an idiot and that he's not the only one in the world who wants to go home now. I feel so much better. Instantaneous, isn't it? But while all that's going on, the evil citizen is confronted by the good citizen. This is how people are. This is the way they do stuff. And what are you going to do? You can't change the world. Don't fight it. So inwardly, there's an immense fight going on inside of this consciousness, isn't there? A good Christian lays his life down for F500 4092 trucks. That's what a good Christian does. A good Jew, don't do to others what you wouldn't do to others. He did that, don't do it back to him. All that, and meanwhile you know what that's called? Conflict. It's called hell. Because it can't ever resolve itself. It's a form of purgatory in truth, which is what this present level of consciousness is. It's a constant struggle to try and make the world that it sees conform to the way it wants to see it. And when it doesn't see it the way it wants to see it, it is in conflict with the condition that it blames for that conflict, unable to see that the source of its conflict is its own unconscious demands that life remain balanced the way it believes it is already balanced in itself. Much to what Eric was speaking of when he got up here. Everybody still following me? So what's going on? Yes, no, yes, no, do it. That's not right. But I need to. I know, but it's not right. Back and forth the mind goes. Why is it going back and forth? What has happened to it? Please just listen. In that moment, in every moment like it, without understanding it, our attention is on something. We never know what our attention is on. Honestly, we don't. And when my attention is on something, that which my attention is on actually holds within the universe of the thoughts and feelings connected to what that consciousness is attending to. I want to get home. It's hot. I want to get cold. I'm hungry. I want to eat. In those moments, that attention and the world that supports it is, for all intents and purposes, a galaxy unto itself. It is a kingdom unto itself. And that kingdom has a center. And the center of that kingdom is what? What is the center of that kingdom? Suddenly I feel pulled, I feel pushed, I feel off balance. You ever feel like you're just thrown off balance? Somebody gives you some news about something that's not going to go the way you want it to go? And what happens? I feel like I lost my balance. Yes or no? And when I feel like I lose my balance, what do I have to do? I've got to regain my balance. And how do I regain my balance? I have to quit the world that was turned upside down and invent or imagine another world where I will finally be balanced, because I'll get everything aligned the way it's supposed to be according to that I, that sense of self that didn't even exist prior to that moment of that man pulling his F4 5932 in front of me. Everybody still tracking with me? So there's this struggle to maintain a balance. And I can't struggle to maintain a balance unless I feel I've been thrown off balance. But if I didn't know that I was going to be thrown off balance, what is it that in that moment that actually was thrown into this chaos, into that conflict in the moment? This is what I want to examine with you. Because please, I can't, it's impossible. You all get this idea of thrown off balance, yeah? Just because a certain moment unfolds the way it does, yes? But we've seen time and time again, I'm not going to go into it, I don't have time, that every moment that unfolds is part of a much broader unfolding. And that moment that unfolds is itself a revelation of a certain process of reconciliation that never stops taking place. Like every drop of water in a river replaces the drop that came before it. So there's always this movement. And so is there always this movement in passing time of these thoughts, of these moments that produce in us, for some reason, this great upset, instead of our being able to move with the moment and receive the essential energy, the flow of it, as it's intended to be. Everybody still going with me? So I'm in that moment, so I'm threatened by something. There's actually a threat. You don't look at me the way I want you to look at me. The moment doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. The man curb sneaks. They don't bring my food the way I want it. Every last one of those moments produces instantaneous resistance. Yes? What is the instantaneous resistance to that man, to that woman, to that government, to that opinion, to that poll, whatever it is that I read or feel? Why do I have that instantaneous resistance? And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, what you resist, another person will insist upon. And usually insistence and resistance meet each other in human relationships, don't they? What is that disturbance that we're always trying to reconcile? That's all I've been working to for the first 15 minutes. What is the nature of that disturbance? See, here's the problem, is that we can have words for this, but the word is not the thing. We must see it. That's what all the true teachings are about. Not what this man or this woman professes to be true, but whether or not I hear something and understand it to some extent that I want to explore it further. I want to know from myself. You should want to know from yourself by now, sweet God, Why am I disturbed 100 times a day? And you are. And those disturbances for nothing. For absolutely nothing. Regardless what you make of that moment of disturbance, which, by the way, in your way to rebalance something that felt lost, you will go through this process of identifying with a mind that creates time. Because I need time to get to the bottom of this disturbance. I need time to make something of myself so that I can't be made into something that I don't want to be when things happen that I don't want to happen. So thought, the mind seeking to create balance, restore itself, does what? It simply creates a new balance, a new center for itself that it's now balanced on, and thinks that its momentary balance proves that it's restored peace to itself. When the very attempt to create balance is to disturb the peace. Isn't it? Because balance already exists, but not the balance I want. Because it's not centered around what it needs to be centered around. So here's a story. Take a nice deep breath. I was going to have actors, but I didn't have time to pull it together. Student comes to the master. And why does any student come to the master? A, he or she wants to learn, but what does he or she want to learn primarily? Yeah. When am I going to be okay? When will I know? And by the way, it isn't that you really want to know the divine. When will I know that which will keep me from being disturbed? And if the divine works into it, that's great. Because for the longest time, divine to us is money, power, possessions, position. That's what divine is to us. God help this poor world. Student comes to the master because he's been working. Master, I'm off balance. I know it. Where is the center of gravity? It's a real question. And by the way, if a student ever actually asked that question, the master, the teacher would know that student has worked to a certain degree of understanding, because that means they don't know how to reconcile. They don't know where all of that is. Follow me? The master says to the student, you want to know where the center of gravity is? Yes, I do. Don't get mad at me now, breaking into my own story. Master says, everywhere. That is, until out of self-ignorance, you try to create or otherwise control the divine balance of life. Let me chew on that for a minute. You said it's everywhere until I try to create or otherwise control balance. Exactly. But I don't know what you mean exactly, Master. The Master says, the source of all your suffering is because of a simple misunderstanding that you have and unknowingly cling to about your life. I'm all ears. What is it? You believe, sorry, it's funny to me. You believe that the world revolves around you and that you are the center of the universe. And guess what? He wasn't this happy. You're not. You're not the center of the universe. And you believe you are. God help us. There isn't a moment that takes place that isn't measured from a surreptitious center of a false self, that in that moment his or her attention has glommed onto something critical to resolving a past loss of balance. And in trying to reclaim that center, create a new center around which everything will revolve and orbit properly, so that then my life will be in shape again and I'll feel successful and happy about myself. I don't know why, in one respect. It's so difficult for certain lessons that have come and not just gently knocking on the door. Certain lessons just knock you flat on your back, don't they? Wait till you start catching certain things about your chief feature or other characters or qualities that you don't even know exist as the basis of your relationship with life. Talk about being knocked flat on your back. And yet, in spite of those revelations, this consistent, mechanical grinding on of these thoughts and these feelings and our relationship to them, so that in a heartbeat, a person is lost in the whirling of this machinery to such an extent that they believe all the sensation and movement is who they are. And then once again, the center of their existence is locked into a temporary sensation of self. And in that temporary capture of sensation that I'm identified with, anything that comes along and threatens whatever the conditions are that have put that together are my enemy. Instantaneously my enemy. And I didn't even know I was going to have an enemy. Why? Because I was so identified with the temporary center of my life that I had no clue whatsoever that that center only exists as long as the prevailing conditions allow it to stay in place. And the minute those conditions changes the center of myself, and the moment the center of myself changes, my identity's threatened, and then what happens? Boom. You getting the picture with me, everybody? Where is the center of any moment? Take a nice deep breath. Transition time. We'll just slow down. Where is the center of any moment? You know, it's not really a fair deal, but where the center of that, I was going to show you this really cool thing with a toothpick over a glass. Where is the center of this napkin that I'm balancing on my hand? Where is the center of that balance? The mass determines the center relative to what it is balanced on. The center of our life, the center of every moment for us now is what? I'm asking again. What is the center of every moment? Anybody? It is on whatever my attention is on. Isn't that the center of the moment of my life? I am centered on what I want. Yes or no? And what is it that my attention is usually placed on in every given moment? I'm giving you this, that we don't know where our attention is 99.9% of the time. Our attention is like a dog off of a leash in a park filled with baskets of bones and balls and chewy toys everywhere. Like that. The center of my attention goes to whatever it is placed on. Not what I say I placed it on, because, for instance, you think that you place your attention on your ambition or a problem you have or some place you want to go, because for every relationship of that attention, you derive from what you're attending some kind of experience, do you not? Negative experience, positive experience, it makes no difference. I am not presently the one who places my attention on those things. I'm driving down the street. My attention isn't on I'm not going to go through that, on that Ford truck. My attention is on getting home. I don't know my attention is getting home. My attention is on getting comfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I'm hot. I worked. I did this. I did that. Go eat. My attention is on something I want. And then somebody somewhere interferes with what I want. To the moon, Alice. Instantaneous violence. Instantaneous conflict with a condition that only exists because my center of attention and myself is locked into something it is identified with, and the center of my galaxy in that moment cannot be moved left or right without a threat to my center, to who I think I am. And when you do that, the whole thing collapses, doesn't it? And as I said, when it collapses, what do I have to do? And listen to this, I have to recreate a new center, only this one's based in violence. Now I'm not thinking about what I want to eat, I'm thinking about what I want to do to that person for having done that. And it's still the same, pleasure or pain. When the center of my attention is placed on something, my experience is the derivative. As goes my experience comes my sense of self. And as comes my sense of self, my identification with the conditions that have produced it. And there I am in my own little world, thinking to myself, all is well until all is hell. Everybody still following me? And what's the problem with that? There's always a disturbance. Do you know human beings believe that when they finally make it, they're going to be beyond disturbance? There's no such thing as beyond disturbance. There's such thing as the first death, the one I read to you, where I am so crystallized and so hardened and so caught up with what I'm identified with that nothing else can enter into that crystallization of this consciousness, so that essentially I think I'm safe, I'm isolated, I'm insulated. No, you're dead. Because nothing touches you anymore other than the things you touch to hide from yourself your own death. Too strong? There's always a disturbance. I don't want any more disturbances. I wanted to eat my pizza without a problem. My pizza and my Dr. Pepper. No, please don't bring any problems to me. How many of you like people that bring you problems? Raise your hand. Why do you bring people problems? Why do you look like a problem? Do you know you do? Almost all the time, you're just carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Every opinion, counter to my own, does what to my world? Throws it off center. If you agree with my opinion, we're in the center together. That's what political groups are. Those were all gatherings of human beings in the name of something do that to insulate themselves from anything counter to what they hold and believe is true. So that group becomes a center, and then that group becomes a party, and that party then becomes a state, and that state then becomes a country, and that country then goes to war with any and every other country that doesn't hold the same idea of what the center of things should be. Can you see it in scale? And then ultimately every country and civilization collapses. And why does it collapse? Because it never had a true center. Its center was what it was against, and what it called being for the good was really trying to get rid of the things that were interfering with its identity, its mass or individual identity. Please? Every last one of those moments, the same condition. Now, if I've done anything at all in the first 30 minutes, I hope I've proven this. Or at least you'll suspect it. Don't you know instantaneously what's disturbed you? I'm trying to show you that you can't know what has disturbed you. Because if you knew what had disturbed you, wouldn't you be beyond disturbance at this point? Do you think that monks and nuns and religious people who go up into the mountains and live in those caves, some of them may have an authentic center that can be in relationship with what we're going to look at, but most of them trying to escape. You can't. There's no place you can escape your own consciousness. But not knowing it, that consciousness creates safe centers of safety. That's what we call our nuclear family. That's what we call being together where nobody can bother us. That's what we call me and my pizza, a safe center. Except even that safe center is haunted by the other thoughts that go, you shouldn't be eating this. Look, you're putting on weight. This isn't going to work. What would people think if they saw you stuffing that into your face? You must eat elegantly. It's a problem to eat elegantly, isn't it? Painful. Why? Because on one hand, I'm a wolf. I'm like my dog, Tessie. You put a bowl of food down and it went, and it was gone. It was unbelievable. As opposed to, I watch certain people, little bites like that. You know why you do that? Because your mom and dad told you don't be a pig. So you go, I mustn't be a pig. I must be something better than a pig. So I'll be in so much conflict, I'll eat 5 times what I should eat ordinarily, but I'll do it very slowly. I think I know what's pushing me, don't you? I just look at you and I feel pushed. I think I know what's pulling me. I look at the news, I look at my financial statement, I look at my face. I'm pulled. I gotta do something. But I don't think to myself prior to that moment that I have to do something until I suddenly feel pushed or pulled. Everybody on pay. So the disturbance is something's pushing or pulling. And what is it pushing or pulling on? This surreptitious, this false center that is the product of some consciousness seeking to get everything balanced and reconciled and in place so I can go like that and be forever happy. Ready? Take a deep breath. We're making a huge transition. This is where I don't know whether I lose you or not, but I have to try not to lose you. I have to try to bring you into this bigger picture. You know the saying, don't you? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And there's the mythology in every religious tradition of the creation. And in every last one of them, there is something that is the same. And that is essentially, this is largely not understood. God did not just go, whew, there's a world. That's what children think. But first, to use words, no matter how you come up with this, and you'll see it for yourself one day. You won't have to think to yourself. You won't have to have religious thoughts. You won't have to believe in things. You'll just see the fact. The principal forces that govern all things are intimated in that phrase that was translated from Aramaic, and who knows what language that came from. In the beginning, this divine intelligence imagined, brought up the idea of something that would be endlessly expansive, heaven, and endlessly contracting, the earth. Endlessly expansive, the heavens, always moving out, always being larger, endlessly contracting the earth, that which is gravity, that which is pulling everything into itself. So you have these two principal forces, yin and yang, pushing out, pulling in, all the time operating in everything that exists. Now, do I have to explain that any further, or can you see that that's a fact? These original celestial forces that first had no forms whatsoever to express them, and then required forms so the principles could be brought into manifestation, then begin to exemplify themselves through. Now, hey, just don't get impatient with me, okay? I'm going to teach you two words. Repeat after me. Centripetal. Centrifugal. Centripetal, centrifugal. Those are two words. Centripetal means that which is trying to go out. Centrifugal, that which is trying to come in. Expansive, contractive. Expansive, centripetal. I'll show you. As most of you know, that I'm a bit of a nature lover, and I feed my mountain. Not my mountain. I've had at least a 30-year struggle with squirrels. I am alone responsible for the development of the superintelligence of squirrels because I've created so many ways to thwart them, and every last one has proven faulty. But every once in a while I see something that makes me laugh. I know it shouldn't, but I'm evil. And by the way, it doesn't work, but when I first saw it, I thought it was the funniest thing in the world. There is a bird feeder that when a squirrel gets on it, the feeder starts to twirl. And the longer that you're on that feeder, that squirrel, the faster it twirls, until at last the squirrel is hanging out with its claws like this, its body strung out, and it's not going to let go until finally it goes flying. Now, they don't get hurt when they go flying, but it is, to me, the funniest thing in the world to think, even at last, all that time you've messed with me, now out you go. No, that is centripetal. Understand? That is a centripetal force. Now, take a deep breath. Now, it's trying to throw it off from what? What is that squirrel being thrown off of? Something that has centrifugal, a gravity, the center that it's being thrown off of. Now, you can see those are opposing forces. In this instance, the squirrel hanging onto the cage, and that which is trying to throw it off. Would you say that that squirrel, although again, I think it's hysterical, that squirrel in that moment is feeling quite a bit of stress? Like, what in the name of God has happened here that this thing wants to throw me off into space? All I want is a nut. Take a nice deep breath. You and I are squirrels on this earth. Unbeknownst to us, and I'm not going to go through all these numbers. This earth that we're on is spinning like 6,000 miles per hour around. You're traveling like 6,000 miles an hour on this planet. And if there weren't gravity, you would be the squirrel, wouldn't you? You go, off you go, and then the earth would go, oh, got rid of those nuts. That was funny. So the earth is spinning, and the centripetal force wants to throw me off, but the center of the earth, the gravitational force, centrifugal, wants to keep me here. Now, do you experience that feeling? Do you feel like something wants to throw you off, even if something's trying to pull you in? Do you? But it's there, isn't it? Is it there or not? Just because you're used to it doesn't mean it's not there. You're used to being a pain in the you-know-what, and you think you're not. You are. That means it's there. It's hard to believe it's there, isn't it? Now, the earth, while it's trying to throw us off, the earth is trying to throw itself off from the sun. Earth wants to go. I don't know where, but I don't blame it. Where do you want to go? It's just the earth held centrifugally by the gravity of the sun, centripetally by its own force. It's always trying to go in a straight line. That's the reason it goes around. If the earth didn't have the center of the sun to hold it, off it would go. Everybody understand? So that means the earth itself is under tremendous pressure. Just as we are, that we don't know, the earth itself experiences these strains. That's part of what makes the various movement from the magna up through the sliding of the continents. All of these forces acting on the earth around the sun. Am I done? No. The sun, in the meantime, is moving at some unbelievably astronomical speed around the center of our particular galaxy, which they say is a black hole. So here's the center of our galaxy, this massive black hole, something like 1,000 times the mass of the sun, which is inconceivable, and it's sucking everything into it. So they say. I don't think they know anything, personally. I don't. I think these are just beautiful examples of yin and yang, of the opposites in constant play, bringing about these tidal forces that these instruments called the moon, the sun, the earth, including you and I, but unfortunately without understanding, trying to bring about this constant movement of all this energy so that all of these things involved in those relationships can be ceaselessly reconciled to each other. So that nothing changes, that everything doesn't. And that everything that is changing is part of a greater accord, an atonement between the overall intelligence that all of this is moving into and through, because there has to be a center to all of that. Where is the center? Bring up that image, please. Where is the center of all that I'm describing to you when you can start looking at a spiral galaxy, and many of them are, there's different kinds. Can you see that that's an example of centrifugal and centripetal forces? That the center of that thing is, the centripetal forces are throwing out new stars. And the center of that galaxy is trying to keep everything together. And it's the relationship between those opposing forces that creates and maintains the existence of everything that is spun out of it, including the balance that every time that universe spins, it is changing every other universe, albeit in time, as it is going through that, so that nothing is disconnected from anything else. Except for who? And the amazing thing is, not one of those creatures, I can't speak honestly of a planet or a sun, but as far as I know, no other creature has any awareness of itself at all as part of this relationship between these opposing forces, and the fact that somewhere these opposing forces have a center that is neither one of the parts but greater than the sum of them. You can take that picture down, thanks. So if I'm communicating with you, which I hope I am, we can see all this is moving. And that if any one of these parts decided that it was the center of all things, what would its experience be? It would be in a ceaseless form of disturbance, but a disturbance that it would resist ceaselessly, instead of understanding that the disturbance in the field of itself is part of the reorganization of itself into a greater whole. I can't say it better than that. You and I never think of a disturbance as part of a necessary process of rebirth. Do we? No, because in those moments, I think something's dying, me, firstborn, the nefesh. Something's dying, I have to ensure that it lives, so I will simply recreate another world where I will exist again, and everything will be great until what happens? And it happens all the time. Are you at all amazed that I was out playing golf with Doug yesterday? Every time a man or woman who plays golf, if they have any acumen at all, they always are in complete disbelief that they hit a bad shot. It's like part of it. Now, how can there be this disbelief that you just hit a bad shot when you're going to hit a bad shot? It's inescapable. Even because it's all relative in scale. I can't believe that bad things happen to me. Did a bad thing happen to me? Please try to see what I'm asking you. Or did something happen to show me that somehow or other there is a surreptitious center, an identity, some belief, opinion, image of myself that holds sway over everything until the moment comes where it proves that there's nothing true at all about that image in that moment. And then instead of allowing the consciousness that is the father and the mother of that image to see that it has created a world in its own image, and that world is always disturbed because it's a false world, instead of allowing that to take place and being reborn into the possibility of a new understanding, I'll clamp down. Resist immediately. Get negative. Fight. Hate. Does it work? And yet, I'll ask you, does it stop? Now, what evidence do we have, if you're following me? Here's all this. I showed this pretty well, didn't I? Everything moving, everything connected, so that there's the center of the universe is not our sun. It's not the black hole in our galaxy. None of those things. The center is everywhere all at once, and all at once every center is being acted on, and as it is being acted on, it is being changed into something that will participate in yet a new center of the universe that is no one part, but holds all parts in an intelligent awareness of all of itself. Please? So here's all this going on. How do I know that's true? Because wouldn't you like to know it's true? Wouldn't you? You already do, you just forget. So I'll help you. Take a deep breath. I've often spoken of this, and for the longest time didn't have a clue as to not exactly, but a good inclination as to why it is so. I've even spoken of it over the years, I think. I've often marveled, and maybe you have, if once you understand where I'm going with this. How is it, what was that from the Casablanca? Out of all the gin joints in the world, you had to walk into this place. You never saw it. Humphrey Bogart was talking about, was it Catherine? Who was it? Lauren Bacall. She walked into, he'd gone to Morocco or Monaco or where it was to escape all this, and there she walks in. How is it possible the whole universe has gone through whatever it is that this universe is going through, with all the galaxies, all the solar systems, all the creatures on all the various places and the interactivity between all that, and then you bring it down to Earth, and then you bring it into this strange creature called Guy, and you bring all that together, and somehow the whole universe has decided to bring everything that's happened into a single lesson that I had to have at that moment. Every one and everything, a vital part of the whole process. I used to say, how can every human being be the center of the universe? Because in that moment, are you not the center of the universe? Not egotistically, but there you are, and everything working to bring into the revelation of that light a realization about something incomplete, a center that shouldn't be there, locked in place, and everything comes together. And at a certain point, because you refuse the lesson 1,000,000 times, don't you? And then by the grace of God, it constantly brings that, and then wonder, oh my God. Every part of my life, every person I've ever known, every book I've ever read, every film, everything that has ever taken place, all suddenly comes together. And out of that sudden, incidentally, big bang, light. And not just light, but a release through a revelation that who and what I thought I was, the center of my existence, wasn't the true center at all, but there was something entirely different waiting to go off, to be released, to be realized. And then, God willing, you start to have moments like that, not just once a month, but once a week, and then once a day, and then ultimately all the time, because that's what you are. How can I be the center of the universe when, and I'll speak very plainly, when whatever it is that has been created in the firstborn here is the pollutant, is the corruption, is the ruination of all of these things, and yet all of that serves the greater good. When it is understood as part of the greater good, instead of being hated and resisted because everything disturbs it and it wants to restore the world in its own image. And then when you do, and you see, when you actually have an epiphany, you realize the problem wasn't that you didn't understand. The problem was something, and you did not want to see that because it was going to require that you give something up of yourself if you're ever going to actually incarnate that understanding. Because to incarnate a new understanding, I have to die to an old one. Yes or no? You starting to see first and last the way I wrote it? The whole universe comes to that point. And in that moment where the whole universe comes to a point, and please, if you can see this, please, 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 that point's always here. Is not everything, yes or no? Did I not show that? As above, so below. Disturbance, disturbance, disturbance. The whole thing is a disturbance. But not to the whole thing. Only to something that sits outside of the whole thing, believing it's the whole thing. And then trying to make its little thing into the whole thing, which it can't, because then it falls in the pit, because it's blind. You're trying to be free of disturbance. You'll never be free of disturbance until you understand that what you call disturbance is your relationship to a completely different order of consciousness. How does that go? The central urge of every atom is? Now when you think that, you think of the prodigal son, prodigal daughter. I made a mess of stuff, I'm going home. Dad's there, mom's there. Lots of good food. I can drink with my brothers. They won't be happy at first, but I'll prove that I'm worth it. That's how we think, very tangible, yes or no. Try to see this with me. If the central urge of every atom is to return to its divine source, what would that actual divine source be that it wants to return to? the undifferentiated state of creation. That's the divine source. Every atom wants to return to its original place. Its original place. Before it became a thing. You and I are constantly being invited to return to this undifferentiated state of creation. It doesn't mean that things aren't being created. It means that my relationship to all that is being created allows myself to participate in that creation instead of being apart from it, because I have a center that's opposed to this creation but wants that one. Please, did you follow that? Prior to all of this being cast out into space and time, the minute it was cast out into space and time, it became differentiated, didn't it? The second that took place, whatever that was, and you don't need to think, you don't need, oh, the Big Bang was, no. Just that there is an undifferentiated state where the center is in all places at once. Now, I'll show this to you. Let's go back to this beautiful moment in nature. What is any beautiful moment in nature when we are properly there? We've spoken of it endlessly. What is it? The observer is not apart from the observed. That which it sees is inseparable from the reflection in its own consciousness. So that observer and observed are at once one thing. Yes or no? You've had the moment. You have an epiphany. That's what the beauty of the energy of an epiphany is, the fusion, not the sensation of fission the way we look at it, because that's what we're always doing. That's why the Alka-Seltzer, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Never mind. You have to take it. No. So, in that moment, and they're too far between, and they're not meant to be, because I'll show you the whole thing is meant to be like that. In that moment, observer is observed. Where is the center of that moment? Come on. Work. Here I drive up my driveway. I speak of these moments, certain parts of light. You see certain things. You watch a fawn leaping across the field, whatever it might be, and you watch her, and you've given yourself to it. There's no you looking, and there's no thing you're looking at. It is a singularity, yes or no? When that singularity is there, where is the center of it? The center of it is in awareness. Awareness is the center. But there can't be anyone there in it, or it's no longer the true center of things. And that true center that is called awareness, is there any place that awareness isn't connected to all else that is awareness? So in that moment, what I call the beauty of the moment is actually just a split second where the revelation of the divine is realized in this consciousness. There is the incarnation of something altogether new born. And in the altogether new birth of that consciousness, there is a center that is everywhere at once being acted on, everything by at the same time. Now, I'm spilling this out. It's impossible. I told you, if I succeed at all, you'll have at least glimpsed something of a larger picture. This is why the idea of double attention is so precious. Because when I'm actually aware of myself and aware of you at the same time, where's the center of that moment? For me, if I'm not aware of myself, the center of my attention is on you, that I don't like how you're dressed, I don't like what you're doing, you're not responding properly, or there's something wrong with me, I'm the worst terrible person because I'm not getting blah, 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 blah. Flip-flop, 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 yes or no? And then as if a kind of taste. This is why it said that the Father saw the Son returning home from a great distance and met him halfway. Halfway being that exact point between these opposing forces. There is somewhere out there, there is a field beyond wrongdoing and right doing. I'll meet you there, said Rumi. I'm describing to you that field as best words can do, at least as best I'm capable of doing now. And the beauty of this discussion, this description, is that the field's already here. Kingdom of heaven is within. Field already exists. I'm just outside it. And why am I outside it? Because that's how I know myself. That's what my identity is outside this real center, in a center, my own little galaxy, my own little world, created by who I am, what I'm going to be, what didn't go right, what I need to fix. That's the center of my universe. You are the one that has to see beyond the shadow of a doubt that you have the capacity to be aware of that consciousness, and in the aware of that consciousness begin this proper form of exercise that I will close the talk with. Take a nice deep breath. We know the saying, as goes my attention, as comes my experience, so comes my sense of self. And my sense of self is predicated on what? Well, first my attention went to something, didn't it? My attention went to you, them, this or that, and when it went to that, it went to it for a very distinct purpose, which was to see if it could strengthen the center of itself or escape the threat to the center of itself, as witnessed by what you are not doing, right? So my center of gravity in that moment always belongs to where my attention has gone. Can I be aware of something pushing and pulling on me? Because if I'm in a proper place, I'm aware of the disturbance, but I'm not fighting with the moment that isn't going the way I want it to go. It isn't arguing with you because you disagree with me. It isn't hating the guy that drives by in that F5 430 now. None of that's going on. Instead, there's just the perfect ceaseless awareness of that disturbance and participating in the transformation of that consciousness, as it sees itself wanting to lean left or lean right, and knowing that there can be no balance in any attempt to reconcile the moment according to the center of itself as it imagines itself. So the exercise is to start feeling, we'll put it in simple terms, something's trying to throw my life out, I'm trying to pull my life together. Basically, yes? Is something trying to throw my life out? Is it? On one hand, it is. It's constant centripetal forces, expansion that's necessary. That's how things are made, create. They need space to go into. That's why they will never be able to explain why the universe is expanding faster than they thought, and let alone where it's going. It's not going anywhere. It's folding back into itself, but I'll wait for them to find that out. And yet, I enable people, don't I? When I enable people, isn't that part of what? That's part of a centrifugal force. Draw them in, make them dependent, keep them here, draw them in. And on the other hand, everything's going out. Where's the solution? Where's the center? Is it in either one of those movements, or is it in the awareness of the disturbance produced by those opposing forces? In the awareness of it. That's called voluntary suffering. Instead of the suffering of, I'm going to fight or flight. I'm going to struggle to change that moment and then control this one when that doesn't work out. Completely different relationship to life. Do you see it? So I feel something pulling on me, pushing on me. How many of you know, how many of you are experiencing that right now? It's all the time, isn't it? But now you have an understanding about it. That's never not there. But for now, neither is your mind telling you why you're experiencing that. And I'm trying to get you to see you don't know why you're experiencing that. And if I actually knew I didn't know why I'm experiencing that, I would have to just sit with the experience, wouldn't I? In the center of it. Undifferentiated. The more you understand that, the more you'll be willing to let the first become the last and the last become the first. Because rebirth is in the ceaseless realization of my actual position in this beautiful scheme of God's life, where all the parts serve the greater whole, and you and I are, in fact, a part of that greater whole We just don't know it's true. See where your attention is going. Take your attention back. Bring it into this moment where you're present to yourself and what you think is pulling or pushing, and stay right there in the middle, observing, witnessing. You do that and you will see everything change. And you know why you'll see everything change? Ready? Take a nice deep breath. Because it's already changing. You just don't know it because you're too busy trying to keep your little place in place. Let's take a break. Come back.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, isn't that music just beautiful? Nice interlude that we have there. Well, we're about ready to begin our second part of class. That is our open discussion with Guy. And before we move to that, I have just a couple of brief announcements for you all. The first is one, especially for those of you who may have tried to join us yesterday. On Saturdays, Guy gives a talk every morning, a Saturday morning, on insighttimer.com/live, a live talk. And yesterday, unfortunately, we were unable to complete that broadcast. Had technical difficulties and worked, and it just didn't work out. And so we were unable to complete it, and we apologize for that. But we worked behind the scenes, and I just want to let those of you who join us for that to know that Guy fully intends to be back online this coming Saturday at 8 a.m. on Insight Timer. And so please do join us again. Plan on it. Guy has said that the material that he intended to present this past Saturday, yesterday, he'll work into what he wants to talk about this coming Saturday. So that's life. Sometimes you just got to roll with it. And so we hope you'll join us again on Saturday for that. The second thing is, as I was sitting here thinking, it is something that we say often to you, but I was thinking we can't say it enough. And that is to say thank you. Thank you to those of you who join us for these classes and share, and especially thank you to those of you who donate and help us in this mission to spread these ideas around the world. We very much depend on the gratitude of those other than ourselves, and we are grateful for your help. And if you'd like to help us, if you're not already, please do consider going to our website at guyfinley.org/donate. And there you'll find a number of different ways in which you can help us, both small and big, and some that don't even cost you a penny. And we are grateful for your help, and we depend on it. So thank you very much. And we look forward to you joining us and helping us further. All right, that's it for the announcements. Let's go back to the main room, and we'll see if Guy is ready to begin the Q&A or if he has something else he'd like to say. Are you ready, Guy?
Yes, John.
All right. We have a couple of leftover written questions that we'll start with to take care of those. And I see that Tony has raised her hand in the queue. So I'll start with this leftover question, Guy, that came in from Thomas on YouTube. And he asked this. He said, "May I ask why Guy keeps calling this lower state of sleep a consciousness?"
Well, if you're out there, Thomas, as short and sweet as I can put it, everything created has consciousness. And by that I mean that the simple awareness of something other than myself is what consciousness is at that level. Even a stone responds to the presence of another stone. Their fields interact. A caterpillar has consciousness of the leaf. Caterpillar will never know that it becomes a butterfly. Because in order for there to be something above that simple level of consciousness, there must be something that is aware of that consciousness. This is where human beings have a certain possibility that other creatures don't. We can be aware of our own consciousness. I can be aware of me being set against someone. A deer cannot know. It cannot have an awareness of being set against its predator. It naturally responds to the predator. It has consciousness of the predator, but no awareness of it other than what nature allows. So consciousness is simple awareness. Higher awareness is awareness of consciousness in its simplicity and its division, I might add. Pat's on stage, John.
Hello, my name is Patricia. When I was sitting listening to the talk, which I loved, anytime you get an exercise, you can put it right on your state right at that moment. And I could see the push and the pull. When's this talk going to be over? Oh, I love this talk. Just always we're being pushed and pulled within ourselves. And I realized when I was seeing this that that's why the saying, in thy patience you gain your soul. Because only through patience and bearing that push and pull that goes on constantly in our lives, can we wake up to this and rise above it.
Yes. Back to you, John.
All right, Guy, I'm going to go next to this question that came in earlier this week. It is a follow-up question that came in from Mary that you addressed in Wednesday's class.
Okay.
In that question, Mary was asking how each of us could recognize what we're meant to create in the world. And after hearing your reply, then she sent in this follow-up. She said, I sincerely was interested in listening to Guy's input on how each one of us are meant to create based on individual personalities, talents, interests, etc. I liked his answer on trying to create a life without enemies and anger as being a worthy act of creation. And he also mentioned, I'm making the assumption we know our purpose, whereas my question is, how do we recognize our purpose and what each person is meant to create as participants in God's creation, in the big picture, not us being the protagonists?
Yeah, Mary, everybody wants to know what their purpose is on this planet. First, I would be all wrong if I didn't tell you that there isn't a person on this planet that knows what your purpose is. And anybody that purports to tell you that they know what your purpose is and how you should fulfill it, you should run from them and take your wallet with you, I might add, because that's how people capitalize on this weakness, which is really ignorance of our own purpose. He seems to feel this purpose. I like how he feels. I'll make his purpose mine. Imitation is death, not life. And we may not like the idea, but it is indisputable. I spent my life, I believe the purpose of my life was to have people like me. I believe the purpose of my life was to live above the fray in an undisturbed state, so I acquire through my ambition all of the things that desire tells me will free me. My purpose is in my ambition. I believe my purpose is to set the world straight. Get everybody straight, actually. Why mess with individually, collectively? I'll just make the whole thing perfect. That's my purpose. And my days are filled with fear and anger, regrets and doubts, pushing against this, pulling against that. And then for whatever reason, however long it takes, a person then one day realizes, you know what, the purpose of my life is not to belong to a group of people that say they know what the purpose is. Purpose of my life is not to have enough pleasure so that it outweighs my pain. That's not the purpose of my life. It's impossible. How do I know? Because somebody told me so? No, because I've lived the pain of following that purpose and doing everything I could to make it so. And when I made it so, I was still disturbed by anything that challenged the world I had set, the center I'd created around myself. And at a certain point, it's called negation. Every true teaching comes at it that way. Not this, not that. I'm left with this terrible realization, I'm still in pain, I'm still disturbed, but I don't know how to escape it. And when that's crystal clear, At the same time that that's crystal clear, so is your understanding, I'm going to have to let go of my invented purposes. Not that the purposes that I followed didn't have a purpose, because they do. How many of you know what the Crab Nebula is? Anybody know what that is? They call it a sun factory. It's just this gorgeous pillars of creation. Have you ever seen it? The telescopes provide us these unbelievable glimpses of these magnificent galaxies. Is there a galaxy, in quote, that's responsible for throwing out suns? Or is there something behind the galaxy seeing to it that it serves the purpose it's given in order to create the suns that then go out and become a solar system and life is born? So I'm saying, Mary, that on one hand, when we try to create a purpose for ourselves, it's because without knowing it, something in us is telling us what our purpose in life is. Now, through purpose, I have to throw this in. It's not an answer you want because it's showing you both sides at the same time. Through purpose and through creativity, I discover. I discover what is innate. I discover what I can be given. I discover what I don't have. I discover what I need. And then I go through whatever those iterations are to bring about this reconciliation between the obvious limitation on one hand and the other desire to fulfill something that I feel is already a part of myself. Because you can't have a purpose that doesn't include this idea that this is already a part of myself. I'm aiming for myself. What did the Native Americans say? I'm the one I've been waiting for. So purpose, creation, all of that is marvelous. But never mistake a single purpose or a single thing that you create for being the fulfillment of your capacity as a human being, because it isn't and can't be. And that's where we get stuck. Did you not try to create I did. Create a life for yourself where you get all this stuff worked out, the center's right there. All everybody has to do is just recognize, I'm the sun, you're the planets. Yes or no? And when one of these planets wobbles, goes off orbit, a new moon comes in, whole thing's thrown into total chaos, and then I got to go through the whole thing of reestablishing myself as the center of all things. That's hell. See, to us, if we could be the center of all things, that would be heaven. And I'm telling you that the wish to be the center of all things as you, with what you want, I'm telling you that's hell. You have to discover that. The more you discover that, the more your purpose in life will change, but it won't deny these other purposes, these secondary purposes, through which you discover what I'm describing to you. That's the best I can do, Mary.
All right, Guy, we'll go next to Tony in the queue. Hello, Tony.
Hi, good morning. Another wonderful talk, Guy. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Tom.
I think divine attention is what you're describing. And I voluntarily surrender to the moment, not knowing why it's there. And its purpose is really acting to prune me. I call it divine pruning.
Yes, it is.
In my understanding. And me think again and born again.
Yes.
And I just think your purpose, Guy, for me anyway, is consciousness raising. I just love the way you illustrate the higher consciousness with our experience, with eternal time, truths.
Yes.
And by the way, it wasn't Lauren Bacall, it was Ingrid Bergman.
Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman. Okay. Well, I was going to say Taylor Swift. What do I know? Okay.
But seriously, I just feel divine attention is where I feel
Yes.
maybe that oneness you're talking about.
No, and that, that's good. And let me see that I understand that. I understand it. But then let me see that I get up in the morning and I'm carrying over some dream or some thought, some problem from yesterday or a hope for tomorrow. And my attention goes to that intention. And that intention did not originate with me. It was carried over from the past as an unfulfilled promise that is never fulfilled, because what I attend to make myself the center of the universe ensures that I'm in constant conflict with it. So let us be honest with ourselves. That was supposed to be Insight Timer, by the way, Saturday. It will be this coming Saturday. Let me be honest about my intentions so that I can begin to do this proper, as you said, Tony, pruning, using the celestial shears to get rid of this self that goes everywhere mucking things up. Nice to hear from you, Tony. Let's go on, John.
All right, Guy, I'm coming back on. I have 4 written questions and a couple hands in the queue, so let me read one of the questions. This one came in from Frida. Frida says, "Hello, Guy. Is it that when you are in a storm with all the feelings and thoughts that you are going in all directions, that those are some kind of forces to bring you into balance because you are actually always out of balance? Thank you for everything."
That's a good description of karma, Frida. That which is created, no matter how sophisticated, sublime, by the fact that it requires life to act on it, to continue to bring it into life, is incomplete. What is incomplete is never not being acted on by the will of which would bring it into the whole of itself. When it is brought into the whole of itself as a new creature, it is then again incomplete, because it is still a creature apart from creation. What we talked about today is the possibility of our entering into this field out beyond right doing and wrongdoing, where we are no longer polarized as we are because of a mind divided against itself. Rather, we have found our proper place in our Father's home, in the divine kingdom, where there is no conflict, just the awareness of those forces producing this consciousness that is a participant in it. On we go.
On we go. I'm going to come on and read this question next, and then after that we'll go to Fiona in the queue. This question came in from Rebecca. She simply asked, "Can Guy please repeat the exercise? I didn't quite grasp it. Thank you."
Well, I can't repeat anything unless I wrote it. And in this instance, I never wrote the exercise down, but I will explain the gist of the exercise again, Rebecca. There's no moment, if we're present at all, where we aren't feeling some form of a disturbance. There's no moment. It's always there. That's what your awareness is. Your awareness is this field in which the opposites are acting. There is a disturbance. That is the essence of creation, is disturbance. Only in creation, disturbance is reconciled by the divine into something new. With us, this disturbance is reconciled into the reincarnation of the consciousness that created it. So the task is simply, when I feel this disturbance, when I feel this unwanted moment, let me take my attention back and place it into my awareness of myself and the moment at the same time. That's the exercise. Because the awareness is what bridges the opposites. It is where they meet together in a center, and in the center of that awareness is that which is neither the left or the right, up or down, but that which is both, yin and yang, and that place is where there is freedom, liberation, and creation, and we participate in creation in that way. On we go, John.
All right, we'll go next to Fiona in our queue. Hello, Fiona. You're unmuted.
I'm waiting for the lilt. Fiona. You take the high road and I'll take the low road. Fiona, I don't know where you are. I sang a little song for you. I hope that we catch up. Try again. Never say die. Well, I can't say.
All right, we'll move to one of our written questions, Guy, and we'll come back to Fiona and hope that we can get that straightened out with her. Here is a question from Susanna. Susanna says, "Oh my God, I'm trying so hard to be patient with myself, waiting intently to hear the magic words that will help me understand, trying desperately to follow the thread, taken auditorially to other tangents that seem irrelevant. The answer finally comes. Awareness, observe, witness. Basically, suffer the indecision. OMG."
Look, that's brilliant. Listen, every time you suddenly have some insight, some feeling, every time that happens, it is because this light, talk about the central urge of every atom to return to its divine source, the light and the darkness that doesn't comprehend itself. The light comprehends the darkness. The darkness is a consciousness without self-understanding. The light comprehends the darkness. When that little bit of light goes off and suddenly, awareness, observe, witness, suffer the indecision. Beautiful. Now work with that. And then you will be given, as a result of your energy not being spent off into space, squandered, as the prodigal son would say, instead of being squandered, something will gather. And there'll be a little bit more of energy, a little more light there to see a little bit more. And then a week, 2 weeks, 5 years, however long it is, you go, oh my God, I see it now. And I go, oh, that's great. Let's see it again. Let's see something new. Because in that moment of new understanding, is there not a new order of consciousness suddenly born? A new sun, a new light. That's it, forever. That's how it's supposed to be. Let's go on.
All right, we're going to go next to Fiona. She's logged back in again. Hello, Fiona. Are you there?
Hello, Guy. Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
Hi, Fiona.
Hi. Wonderful to be part of this talk. Really powerful, and your talk of all the polarities, and it makes me think of the body in anatomy that I've been studying for the last decades. There's such a parallel, because really, in biology, it's impossible to measure anything, not even the center of gravity. I mean, it's just, so when it's directly, in fractal scale, the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And honestly, it's excruciatingly exquisite, though, when you actually
perfect words
see the middle of that hardwired mind, the center of the universe there, that's this or that, and then just to be in it, it brings me to tears, and all I can do is just keep asking and keep
working,
being with this.
Yes.
And the light, your guidance too is fantastic.
1,000 times yes, Fiona. It sounds, everything sounds great until you actually have to start going through some of this, It is, it's beautiful. But I can tell from what she's saying, because she used the word excruciatingly exquisite. Here's what happens. Although it's not the end, there is no end to our relationship with what is unending, is that you start to realize that because you're capable now, this consciousness is capable of entering into this field out beyond the opposites, that you start to get what, like Plato was talking about. I don't understand anything. And not only do I not understand anything, I don't need to. Because it's a fool's game to try to understand. Why? Because the scale is so much greater than the mind. It's like a thimble trying to hold the ocean. And when you finally that's why you're all stuffed up and jammed, because you keep trying to bring everything into this little place that you can control everything from. Finally you go, God, it feels so much better. It's so big, I don't exist anymore like I used to. But I exist in a new way. I exist in a new world. And that's a fact. And that new existence doesn't have the little existence in it. In fact, it's much more aware of the little existence trying to press itself in. And that's part of the process, because as the more awake you become, the more you realize how prone you are to handing yourself over to this little tiny center, clinging to everything, not wanting anything to be other than it is. And finally you go, I was thinking on the way down here today, a human being, doesn't have a center, since all things are being. I'm a human being. One day you'll revel in that idea. I have a life. It was given to me. And it's so full with all of these, see, if look, on one hand, you remember the squirrel swirling around, hanging on like this? Do you ever find yourself hanging on like that? And then one day you say, well, why? Why am I trying to hang on to this? And you know what happens when you think to yourself, why am I trying to hang on to this? You're thrown into another world. Only this time it's not going because of resistance, it's going so you can realize that you can't be thrown out of your world. You are the world you're in, and the whole world is within you. And the more you understand that, the more you allow these tidal forces to do what they do, because you keep discovering that nothing bad can happen to you. And everything bad is already happening to you because you know the center of the world according to, and whatever your name is. On we go, John.
Okay, Guy, here we go. I have 2 written questions left.
And we'll close it off there so we can have speakers, and then we'll pick up whatever's left over afterwards.
All right. Here is a question from Beatrice. Could we somehow say that ceaselessly living in awareness of disturbance is like jazz, making the best out of it? Dancing, riding the horse, soaring, sailing, playing golf. In other words, constantly inviting wisdom to point the way.
To see my stupidity is because wisdom makes it evident that I'm clinging to something I don't need to cling to. I think it's a mistake on a part of a person, and it's natural in one respect, Beatrice. We can't wait to have words, God, Christ, Buddha, wisdom, awakening, enlightenment. Our world, without knowing it, those words become the center of our experience. And when the word, the idea, the image becomes the center of our experience, then everything is in constant contrast with the image and the sense of self derived from that word. So if I call myself a Christian, I hate myself for not being a Christian. Well, that's antithetical, isn't it? How can I hate myself when the God of love has deemed this is what it means to be a human being? It means to judge not. It means not to oppose evil, yet here I am opposing everything that's not part of this image I have of myself. So as best we can, Beatrice, let's just work with this idea. I'm going to stay with your first part. Living in the awareness of disturbance is like jazz. Jazz has no form to it. It's just a flow. The rest of it I'll leave alone, having described it as best I can. Even jazz isn't proper, because jazz is limited. On we go.
All right, Guy. On we go. Then this is the last written question that I have.
Okay, hold on, John. John.
Okay.
I stopped him this time. It's a miracle. This consciousness is so hungry for a basis. It wants a basis by which to look out at what is happening to it. It's hungry for a center. It wants a center so that it can know what is acting on it or what is acting against it. That's what it wants, a basis. This mind, therefore, constantly makes out of moments or words or concepts a basis out of the concept by which it can measure itself according to the concept that it created from its own content. when we live from a consciousness that measures the world according to the content of itself, we don't see that that content and the identification with it is the center that's constantly threatened by anything that disturbs what I call understanding. Real understanding, Beatrice, everybody, real understanding can't be disturbed. Real understanding can't be disturbed because the moment the disturbance takes place and it's aware of the disturbance, it has already become a new understanding insulated from the former disturbance. It's become a new creature. Then it will be acted on again. Did you understand that? This is just a trick. It's a trap. You have to go through it. It's impossible. You cannot avoid it. Your mind must take the teachings, just as it's been done for a gazillion years, and turn them into something that I can stand on. That's what it does. One day you'll realize that anything that's trying to stand on a teaching already has no ground, or it wouldn't be trying to create something from the concepts it has made of the teaching. The teaching didn't start with a concept. It started with an awakening. It started with a revelation, not a principle in hard places. That's where we have to get to. That's what negation is, the gradual discovery that I am a lot better off not understanding and living with the disturbance of realizing I don't understand, because out of that new understanding may come. But if I understand already, I'm for this and I'm against that, I'm in the field called humanity with its insanity, and I'm lost. Now we can go on, John.
All right, Guy, we'll go on, and I'll finish with this written question, last written question. It came in on YouTube from Lemon Zest, and he or she said, can you please share your thoughts on this quote? Try to imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Now try to imagine what it was like to wake up having never gone to sleep.
All Mr. Watts was, it's a quote from Alan Watts, all he was trying to do is stir in whatever human being happened to be around him at the time, a revelation that he had. That's all that was about. And the revelation had to come from the fact, sweet God, I'm asleep all the time. I don't know it. But now that I know I'm asleep all the time, there's something awake. Let me choose to be awake instead of asleep. Because if I can see I was asleep all the time, perhaps it's possible to be awake to that sleeping nature all the time. And indeed it is. Okay, I invite you to stay with us while we have speakers come up to the mic. We share any conversation. You're welcome to take part in that as well. Otherwise, I will see you on Wednesday night. And here comes Doug to get us started.
My name's Doug. There's two words that I really felt lately that take me out of this endless centripetal and centrifugal.
Yes.
Two words, and as human beings have, and it's I know. Because when I know, then I'm out of the system. Because I become my own system.
The new center, that's exactly.
New center of that system. And I know, because it's painful.
Yes.
And it knows, and it's your fault, and it has a taste in it that says, you're out of alignment right now. You're not in your Zen. You're not in this place where you want to be. And you know, I grew up, my father had a very good mind. He had a successful career, high-level people, and I respected that. And I was we were taught, not so much intentionally, but to have a discriminating mind, right? We want to have a discriminating mind so we discern what's good and what's bad. And you're smart. And didn't really take with me, but I could see that creates the critic, this critical nature that always has to know what is right and wrong in the moment. And I think we're supposed to know, we are supposed to know, but when it becomes an I know, then it separates, because it's really what's implied in I know is you don't. know like I know. And that's basically how our day goes on all the time, like the truck man, or you're in line at grocery, or your spouse says something that goes against the grain. But I mean, I love this talk because there is this world of pulling and pushing to where we can kind of be in the center of it, and it's all an idea. But I'll just end with this because you brought up golf earlier. You know, in golf, you know, it's funny when you hit a bad shot, you know what went wrong, if you've studied the game at all. I mean, basically, there's principles that create, whether it's golf or jazz or dancing or whatever, the engineering, there's principles that govern it. And it's so amazing that why didn't that knower know before when he was hitting the shot, what to do? He always knows afterwards, and then he becomes the critic of himself, you know. And a lot of us who play together, we try to help each other, but at some point, you can't do anything. You just have to let whatever happens to the other person happen. You do the best you can, but it's so revealing. Not just golf, but what we're learning here is that I know for myself what I can work on is this knower that's so quick to criticize and just lay it down and see what happens without this knower who has to. That's what his balance is being the critic at large.
Absolutely. I would add something. Come on, El. So that to expand the picture, disturbance, I know. The minute that center is established, it's established by resistance. Resistance establishes the new center. So Christ said, you cannot serve two masters, you'll love one and despise the other. The minute the new center is created, it comes into a world of opposing forces that it cannot avoid because it is for this or it is against that, and it will attract to itself the opposing force. So no new center that this mind creates, I know, I don't, whatever it is, that is always going to bring to itself more of the same, not less. And that's the tell.
Hello, my name is Ellen. I love it when Guy gives a talk that takes us all across the universe. And it reminded me of a scene in a movie that you may have seen, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or so. It was called Contact. And there was a scene where, extraterrestrials had made contact with human beings and gave instructions, blueprints for creating a ship so that the human beings could meet the extraterrestrials. And so the human beings create this ship exactly to the specifications, but the brilliant geniuses at NASA noticed that there was no seat with a seat belt in it, and they were not going to send an astronaut off without being strapped into a seat.
That OSHA, they're in everything.
So anyway, the day comes and she's taking off and the ignition or whatever happens, and she's in the seat.
It created an immense magnetic field of some type that produced a warp, a hole in time and space. That's what all that was about. Go ahead.
Okay, so so she's in this seat, strapped in, and it's shaking and it's shaking, and it's like she's being killed in this seat. All these forces are all pulling her and pushing her. And then she notices that a little piece of something had flown off and was floating absolutely undisturbed around her. And then she realizes, she takes off the seatbelt, she is free, and she's just floating in this ship, not being at all pummeled by all these forces. And I think that's like a physical example of what you're talking about. We are strapped in to this resistance. It's creating the resistance that we're struggling against. And it's like Marley's chains holding us into this thing, and we're being shaken. But it's not by
Life.
the high. It's not by life. It's not by the higher. And when she took off the straps, she entered the field outside of right doing and wrong doing. I don't know. I see so much in this. And I see how Ellen's need to feel safe and protected and to think that she knows is creating the very thing that is tearing her apart.
Yes.
And to have that courage, well, first of all, like in the exercise, to see what is going on, what we're doing to ourselves, and then have the courage to take off all of these things that we think are necessary.
Just to make this clear, Ellie, negation is not courage. Negation is not courage. Negation is the end of the idea of courage.
Right. It's seeing. When you really see it.
That's it. There's perfect action.
Yeah.
Don't apologize.
Hi, my name's Debbie. And what Guy said towards the end about real conscience can't be disturbed is, I think, related to Wednesday's talk where he said, an awake person has no future. Because when you're present to yourself, you're recognizing the thing that wants to get identified with the past. And the future is always an element of the past, if I can explain that correctly. So it made sense to me what you said about real conscience not being disturbed, because you're present. And the mechanical associations will start if you're identified, but if you're not, then you just move on to the flow. You're in the flow.
Yeah,
You're not stuck.
You have to see it to understand. Yes, there's disturbance, but it isn't I who's disturbed. In the world, but not of it. All of these teachings all relate to a specific understanding that you can enter into. In that understanding, there is the understanding of the disturbance, but you understand it's part of a much broader body, and you're a participant in that. When you participate in it, now you're no longer disturbed. So it always sounds like a paradox. I started the talk with that. It requires seeing something from a certain interior elevation. You have your work. Do it. I'll see you Wednesday.